Welcome to Stab the Dragon Productions, episode number 224 for a Whiskey Holiday edition. Which holiday, you ask? Today, September 22nd, 2025, is Hobbit Day, a day wherein we celebrate the birthdays of Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, taken from the fantasy books by J.R.R. Tolkien, The Hobbit, and The Fellowship of the Ring. Additionally, we are in the Oktoberfest season, which is a German holiday which lasts a couple of weeks from mid-September until the first Sunday of October. In 1978, the American Tolkien Society declared September 22nd as Hobbit Day, and the week that contains the 22nd as Tolkien Week. Now, to celebrate, this is, I said, a whiskey holiday, but we're not really drinking whiskey tonight. We're drinking a beer. Why? Well, I like this beer, but also hobbits were known for drinking beer and wine. So we'll look at Einstok Wee Heavy Scottish Ale. This is brewed with angelica root and smoked barley, weighing in at 8% ABV. So why choose an Icelandic beer? Is that really it? This is from Iceland. Notice the Viking up there. Yeah, this is an Icelandic beer. So why choose an Icelandic beer for Hobbit Day? Well, Tolkien studied Old Norse as a teenager. Who knew? And read the old Icelandic Eddas and sagas, absorbing the Norse mythology. And most of the names of his main characters come from these Nordic tales. Gandalf, Durin, Thorin, Oakenshield. I mean, these are all names that you find in some of the ancient Norse sagas, the Icelandic sagas and Eddas. So this goes back, he absorbed Norse mythology, so a lot of that goes into the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit. And this beer is a thick and rich dark brown color. Here I've got poured some into this Glencairn so you can see how dark that is right there. And it really forms a very nice head when you first pour it. I've got a beer stein my son brought back from Germany. This beer tastes of, well, it's thick and rich. It's tastes of coffee, coffee. That's right, a little bit of coffee, chocolate, toffee, a little bit of licorice maybe, a bit nutty. And there's a smokiness and a char to it because they have smoked the barley in here. Scottish ales are among my favorite beers along with stouts and porters. But these are dark, heavy beers, more fit for wintertime, and it's still summer in Fort Worth, hitting about 93, 94 degrees today. I was introduced to Tolkien by my older brother. I saw the books when he was reading them. He had a paperback collection, and he was in high school. I was in junior high. And I asked him about them, and he kind of told me a little bit about it. It's probably in about the 8th grade, I think, and some of my friends had also read them and highly recommended them to me at some point, either junior high or high school. I eventually read The Hobbit and then followed up with Lord of the Rings there in either junior high or high school. And so I've now read the whole series, I don't know, 8, 10, maybe a dozen times. And of course I've seen the movies a few times, not nearly as much as I've read the books. As mediums go, I prefer reading. My brother just this year checked off a bucket list item by taking a trip to New Zealand, and he saw Hobbit Town and some of the scenery where they had filmed a lot of the movies. And he did that in his final year of life, and he has since passed. So very good for him for pursuing his bucket list. I do not travel. I barely get out of the house. Thoughts on The Hobbit. By the time I read The Hobbit in junior high or high school, I'd already read a ton of science fiction. And so I was a bit leery of this new genre called fantasy. But as I began it, that first time as a teenager, my soul was captivated by the story, the characters, the mystery of it all. There was danger, there were battles, a dragon, elves, dwarves, and wizards, and there seemed to be this divine element all throughout. The book elevated the reader, pointed the reader towards noble character and virtue, gave me several things to aspire to. And so The Hobbit became an instant all-time favorite, followed up by Lord of the Rings. And so what I find in these books is that there is a divine plan. Tolkien, of course, was a committed Catholic Christian, and his theology, his faith permeates his works, so that there's several analogies that can be made throughout his works, although perhaps some of the things he really did not intend as an allegory. He's flat out said, hey, this is not allegorical, it's a story. And The Hobbit started off as a story for his own children, published I think in 1937, and then Lord of the Rings in the 1950s. But so he says it's not an allegory, and yet nonetheless there's a lot of elements to the story that reflect things in the Bible, I think. And so you see the evidence for providence, for divine election, the superintending grace of God, the providence of God, all throughout. You see contrasting in characters, the virtuous versus the base, and so there's a good and evil very clearly throughout these works, and it shows what the individual follower must do to overcome evil with good. I think perhaps some of the closest works that would approach this these stories would be Bunyan's A Pilgrim's Progress would certainly be kind of related to that, and then C.S. Lewis with the Chronicles of Narnia. Lewis and Tolkien were friends, and they had this. They were literary critics, is what they were, professors in the university system of England, and so they engaged in writing competitions, and they would read poetry to each other, and just a pursuing excellence in literature with each other, challenging each other. The Inklings is what their group was called, and they would frequently meet in a pub and share good beer. And so you also have things like the Prancing Pony or the Green Dragon in the stories, where they're public houses. You could get lodging, you could get food, you could get beer, and so that was just a normal part in the countryside. All the descriptions of the geography and the nature that is there throughout the book. Tolkien went on many hikes throughout England and then into Europe. And so some of the stories about the mountain ranges that they had to traverse in the books, he was hiking in the Alps. He had explored the Alps. And so much of his history, his personal history, his love for trees. When he was a little boy, there was a favorite tree that he loved and climbed and explored in that tree, until one day he went there and the tree had been cut down for progress. And he was devastated because his tree had been removed. So Tolkien, he was homeschooled for a period of time, and then he was put into a Catholic school system and highly educated. I mean, again, by the time this guy was a teenager, I mean, he knew Latin. He had on his own studied ancient Nordic and learned to read and he began writing his own language, the Elvish language in these books. He genuinely created. I mean, he was a linguistic scholar and understood languages very well, so he created his own language very, very young. I mean, he started working on that again when he was merely a teenager. Of course, he fought in World War I, and he saw at least one very serious battle, but he got quite ill. He got trench fever and was so sick. He was basically in the hospital for a couple of years simply from the illness that was common in those days in the trenches. But the war had a severe impact on him, and that affected his writing. And so you get the good versus evil theme throughout. You get the battle scenes, and he'd been there and lived through it, and so all of this goes into his writings. And I highly recommend reading some biographies of Tolkien, learning a little bit more about how he wrote these books. So we'll perhaps study more of Tolkien maybe later this week, but his birthday comes up in January. I think it's January 2nd, either 2nd or 3rd. I have to double check that. And so frequently I'll do a special Tolkien day there. All right. Well, this is just saying have a happy Hobbit day. This is Stab the Dragon Productions out here.